Well, I guess I'll sort of say a few things first because I've been studying like Michael Heiser's Deuteronomy 32 stuff with like the Elohim and sort of grasping what happens in the spirit between the different principalities and things like that. I've studied some other people like Laura Sanger talking about how especially when it comes to cultism and stuff like that, but even when it comes to just basic murder and things, a history of bloodshed in the land can create basically like spiritual altars to these entities and stuff like that. But you're coming in and you're going like, no, we want Jesus here. And even if you don't always come against the power, which I think usually is the better option anyway, bringing Jesus into a place disrupts the principalities and the powers, right? And that's the whole thing that Paul tells us to do is where our battle is against the powers and principalities and all that stuff. And I remember when we did the Ferguson response back in 2013, um, there were people that would talk about how they would try to go to the protesters and just talk to them and whatnot. And they were like, yeah, we couldn't get a word in edgewise. But then we come in and we set up the tent, we start praying and worshiping. And it was as if all of a sudden they had an ear to hear. They like actually wanted to hear us. I think part of it was they were disenfranchised by the pastors that only showed up when the or pastors that would only show up when the cameras were rolling or wearing
Right.
their suits that had money all over it. Like, and that's not even a joke. That literally happened.
Yeah.
Um, and so they were frustrated with that, but then they saw us. But also, I feel like there was this spiritual paradigm where I know that in Revelation, Jesus has the train of his robe dipped in blood, right? And a lot of people think that's the blood of his enemies, but he's going to war. So I think it's actually his blood. And you can kind of verify that with the woman that touches the hem of his robe. Back in Isaiah, I think it is, he says, saw the Lord high and lifted up, and the train of his robe filled the temple. And so there's this spiritual thing in my mind of like when the Lord is high and lifted up, his robe actually like comes out, and that's what has the blood on it that heals, right? So you kind of take this stand in your city and lift up the Lord and pray, and even with like just the showing up at the homicide location and praying, and then all of a sudden these people can't hide from the law anymore because the Lord shows up and it displaces all this stuff. It's incredible. So I am curious, especially after the Pray the Lou Day, um, did you notice a difference, even though COVID sort of shut everything down and you're
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
okay, well, we can't do that again. Did you notice like a difference in how things happen in the streets? Like, I'm just curious if that was a paradigm shift at all for you guys.
Well, I mean, over the years, we've been prayer walking some rough places, and the homicide rate is dropping.
Yeah.
So on the like alert, and we know that there's a lot of things happening, but we're a portion of that. I like to think of it as like we lifted up the name of Jesus everywhere. So it's like we kind of like almost not confuse the enemy, but like it's just happening everywhere. So it's like, what the heck is going on,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And these people from different denominations and churches are together in a way that hasn't been done. Not only are they together, but they're in the streets and they're praying together
Hmm.
and they're building
Unity.
connection. Yeah, that didn't exist. And so there's this kind of element of John 17, so the world may know. Like,
Hmm.
why why would the people from this part of the city be in praying with these folks? Like, it doesn't make sense. And then why would all these people from different denominations gather together? And what we have seen is, I mean, just a willingness to gather. Like I said, I couldn't get people together for anything, and not only me getting people together. There's a lot of great organizations and people
Hmm.
and ministries here throughout the year that do what they do in their rhythm, and people are coming together. And so, in general, that to me, that didn't used to happen here,
Yeah.
and it is on varying levels more so. So I believe that's some of the fruit of the prayers. And just recently, actually, we had the tornadoes roll through. We had two different tornadoes, one that hit my house on March 14th, and then one that messed up North City, which is a area which we're talking about that we've
Okay.
been in a lot. And just it was a mile wide, 23 miles long. and hit, and it doesn't ever hit the city like it doesn't, but it's mass destruction. And so some of
Hmm.
our friends that are in different ministries are they're like relief centers and hubs, and so everyone's kind of trying to find a way how to rebuild and support one another, and that part's beautiful. But one of the people that's a board member on one of those ministries was like, "Hey, I just want to thank you guys for prayer walking," because she's like, now I feel like people that were like almost like they were back to back but never bumped into each other. It's like we're doing this over here and we're doing that over there. People are starting to find one another and work together.
Hmm.
And she mentioned she thinks it's a lot of just us praying and kind of tilling the ground and the soil, for people
Yeah.
to find one another, and less of us. I mean, there still is kind of a territorial type thing, where it's like it's my church, it's my people, this is my neighborhood, and
Yeah.
so we run into that. But there's also just a willingness to like work together, lay down titles and stuff, man. We don't like we want Jesus to get the glory, man, and we just want to see his kingdom
Amen.
come, and it's so much bigger than one church or one ministry or even one geographic area, so